Hello, hello.
Oh, hello. Oh, sorry, I'm on our webpage here.
No worries.
So, did you get my email about editorial board for the book and symposium?
I did get the email, yeah.
Gonna paste in a link here. So, if you're interested, I'll be happy to add you, of course.
Ah, yeah, I have read this one.
Alan, you're the first one to be saying yes to the editorial board, so you get a big when I see you
Hey.
every time till the end of time. Yeah. I mean, it basically just means two things. You guys get credit for helping with the book, which you already are, and also you get to more actively, sorry, I'm just plugging my phone to charge. You're a little bit more actively involved in choosing who should be there.
Okay.
I have a spreadsheet here that I'll share with you as well.
Looking forward to it.
I'll be right back.
I think I made my coffee a bit too strong. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to pivot the whole thing more into research. You know, the software I'm doing is fine, but it's just too expensive to market it, considering what people are willing to pay for software. It's a really bad situation, not just for me. I'm okay, but as a vibrant developer community, what the hell? And even on the Apple website, if you decide to go closed source and do that, which I did because I'm a Mac guy, on the website and the Mac App Store, we're properly listed. But you really have to hunt for us. And you would have thought with all those millions of Mac users, it would be a bit more, hey, this is the Mac App Store. If you want to do this kind of stuff, wow, you know, rather than some stupid lists that are hidden way down.
It is really wild how I don't know, I want to say Machiavellian the App Store and the Mac Store tends to be.
Yeah.
It's always like curated lists. You can easily find top 10 things by their standards, but you can't go around and search for stuff on your own, and it's really gate kept.
It is
But
bad.
it doesn't suggest based on your interest, or?
Well, so the thing that it doesn't do, the thing that I think it's designed most to do is to prevent you from seeing any kind of long tail. So there is no like, if you know what you're looking for, if you know there's an app called Reader, you can do a search and find it. Reader may sometimes show up if like you're looking for a PDF app, right? But the way that you can say, by contrast, stumble onto something in Reddit or in Hacker News, right, where you can just kind of root around and do soft discovery and then find your way there. You can't do anything like that in the various Apple marketplaces, right? So you either have to take their suggestions, and maybe this has changed since I last looked at it, but I
Here's
found it really difficult to find a full list of apps, for instance.
Alan, for the sake of this discussion, would you mind going in the App Store and just searching for writing?
Sure.
And yeah, actually, Peter, if you want to, but you're in the same market.
Okay.
Because right now, Author Basic is way up there. But you know, that's the free version, doesn't really convert into revenue.
Author is number 4 for me.
Number 4, okay, it's number 2 in the UK.
Number 4 here too.
Yeah. Guess how much money I make every month from reader and author. From author and reader combined, because there's 2 versions. It's a free version of each, and then there's a basic version of each. So in total, between $500 and $1,000.
Jeez.
I feel like a rock star, considering how bad streaming services are paid now. It's like, I'm paid as much as a rock star, meaning nothing. So that's a major reason why I'm switching into more research, and research really is you guys, number one. You know, the network of people, what we do together really needs to be supported more. So I'm looking for some money to make sure everything is really clean. One of the things is the transcripts are really, really hard to clean up. So one thing for the next Future of Text, people will be strongly encouraged to submit something in writing. A presentation is great. I mean, no, the presentation is okay, but the dialogue is great. And the dialogue is supposed to be messy. So I really want this year's symposium to be maybe even 5-minute presentations, but people, hello, Fabian. Did we wake you up? You're here.
Me?
Yeah, no, you're here.
Maybe he's auditioning.
Video recording for this kind of stuff. No, so
Maybe he's auditioning to be a host on Ancient Aliens.
So I have a bunch of headsets, too many, and basically I just started to install, as you can still see from the tool and the drill, a proper shelf that can hopefully not accommodate too many more headsets. But yeah, that's part of the rollerblade, and putting shelf on is what makes you apparently an alien historian.
Very, very cool. We were just talking about, well, first I mentioned how hard it is to sell software these days, which is the main reason why I'm going into research. Being more honest, it's a research project rather than splitting my brain, because, you know, research and commercial just fights in your head, right? And then the thing was about the next symposium and book. I really want people to write something proper, even if it's a half a page, that's fine. But write something before the symposium. Peter's gone on about this before and he's completely right. The presentations really should be 5 minutes maximum, because people should have written something, even if it's badly written. You know, we're not an academic journal. It's more like blue sky thing. Really encourage that, and then have proper dialogue on the day, because the point of a symposium is not to read off a presentation. It is for the dialogue, of course. So that's why I'm trying to get a bit more funding to help with the better quality transcription. Not just, I mean, the AI transcription is fine, but it's to make it readable. That's the thing. So Peter and Alan are already editorial board people. Will you do that too, Fabian?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. You get listed, and it means that what you already do, bringing in people, you get to do more of. And of course, Leon, you are very welcome if you would like to as well.
Is there an example of a certain written work which has been discussed on a symposium, or I'm curious, what kind of standard should I meet here?
Okay, there's 2 different things going on here. I'm doing this with my head because we have 3 books, so I'm trying to be funny. But it's a really good question, because on one hand, the editorial board, all we try to do is make sure it's not crap. But we really don't want to think that we know best. So if someone writes something with no real background in this, but it's written with passion, that is fine. as long as it's okay written and not the worst English and not the worst, it's totally fine. Let's just wait for Adam.
Bare minimum spell checking.
Yes. Adam, we're just talking about how for the next symposium, we really want people to write something beforehand. And Leon was asking about quality, and I was just saying that it doesn't matter, because as long as someone's passionate and not writing something just to be included, which has kind of been attempted before, it's fine. There's no specific academic standard. If you have an honest passion about an aspect of future of text, that's fine. It can be long or short, whatever's easier. But the key is, on the day, we really want to have dialogue. We don't want someone to just read off a PowerPoint. That's a waste of everyone's time. We can have 5 minutes of that max. But because we've been doing so many transcripts and these monthly presentation we have, they're really, really hard to deal with. To get the transcript to really flow, it's almost impossible. That's why I want people to do a bit of writing. But on the other hand, on this little webpage, we have 4 themes. We have text and AI, VR, education, and other. You know, we don't want to exclude, but if we want to be having an editorial board, those are really the directions we should ask people to contribute to, but not necessarily block someone coming in. Have you all seen the little page for that? I'll put the link in the chat again now that Adam is here. Because also, Adam, what I was saying before you arrived is, to sell software now, unless you're a large company, is really, really hard. The marketing costs are so high. I make so little selling my company. So that's why I'm now going into research, working, getting funding, sponsorship, and all of that good stuff. And that means, as a consequence for me, to be completely honest, what is my greatest asset? It's you guys. It's the network, it's the book, it's the symposium. So that's why I'm keen to make it, the quality of it increase a little bit in terms of making it readable and having the right people. So if you guys want to go out and find someone, you know, that would be great.
Just a quick thought on that. I think this is like, it's great to hear, you know, selfishly, that you want to focus on the research side of things. I think it's also an extraordinary year to be focusing on that, right? Like, if there was any, I know VR has been a big focus and there's a lot going on in VR, but right now in there's so many disruptions happening. You know, maybe 2022 was tools for thought, right? But that's still bubbling in its own minor way. VR, obviously, and then GPT and everything that's falling out of that. And there's at least 5 others, right? And it's so not only is it an interesting year, there's a lot of things changing, but it's an interesting year in that I think the sense of a comprehensive whole, or a sense of where technology is going, has really kind of, at least for me, in the last year, just fallen to pieces. Like, I used to be pretty good at, you know, kind of guessing where things are going to go in, you know, 3 years time or whatever. And now I've got like no idea. Right. So, and I think a lot of other people feel that way too. Even like, hey, are these roles that we've understood for the last 20 years still valid roles, you know, or are they going to just go away and be replaced with new skills and I don't know, intuitions, I think, is more to the point. That's really the point I'm trying to make, is that it feels like we're at a moment where we need new intuitions. And there are great strides that are being made by enthusiastic tinkerers, and typically, like, intuition falls out of their tinkering, but no one really has a comprehensive worldview yet. Anyway.
And you get the prize for the most pertinent comment in the group and the most frustrating. So if you at some point skim through in the comments here an email that I drafted to be sent to some kind of a top person in something, it's very in tone related to what you're saying, but it's also really frustrating that we are at a point in time where we have the capabilities of augmenting how we communicate and how we think. There's no question about that. But to actually get our species to support it is really, really hard. So I love what you're saying, but we're up against, just not grasping it at all. Peter.
Yeah, I'm dropping a link in the chat to a group called the Artisanal Software Festival. And that's basically a web ring of software developers who make bespoke applications for people like us. So it has Devin Thinks, a part of the group, Tinderbox, and twice a year they have a summer fest and a winter fest when they run slight discounts on their products, which they tend to price significantly higher than Mac App Store offerings. And all the people who are plugged into that community on the end user side are people who are perfectly comfortable shelling out to have the best of breed tools. So if author and reader were represented in the next cycle of that, I think it would pull in a lot of people and help integrate into the ecosystem. One of the other things that all of the people in those apps do is to support deep linking. So you can have bookends linking into Tinderbox and Devin Think, and you can drag the links between the apps and they'll open the corresponding record in the other application. So all of the members of that community work towards making their products interoperable with each other. And again, for power users like us, as opposed to the average, I don't want to pay more than $3 for this program because Apple has convinced me that all software should be next to dirt cheap because, of course, it shouldn't do more than, here's my app to bold text, and I'm going to buy a separate app for $1 to italicize text. And what do you mean you want to have an app where I can create any style of text that I want and name them and reuse them? Why, I'd have to do a little work. So it's catering to end users who want to roll up their sleeves, the old power users back from the old Mac User magazine days, as opposed to I'm a vegetable and I just want to get an app for that. I think it's the worst thing Jobs ever did, getting that app for that mentality of only little cookie cutter single-use software tools. Big horrible that they should have poured in deep on OpenDoc and gone that route, but sadly, their instincts were dead wrong there, or maybe just ahead of their time by a decade or two.
Thank you, Peter. That's really cool. Yeah, I will definitely have a look at that and join up with that. But so the Future of Text this year, it will be in London. That's the only place Vint has an opportunity to go, because in the evening he's presenting something to the government here. So he doesn't even want to go very far. I haven't found a venue yet, still working on it, because everybody wants money for some reason. So I'll have to find someone who wants slightly less money. Most likely it'll be the British Library, which is nice. So we may have a full day there and then maybe something smaller the second day. So that'll be good. But I would really like to hear what you guys think about the symposium and the book. One thing that I will do this year, I will convert volume 1 into the new format with basically author, so it exports in exactly the same way. And as we've done before, I will put everything online in HTML, RDF, all the different formats I can support. So first of all, what will happen is the book series 1 through 4 will ship with Reader, the PDF software. So everybody will get it. They can delete it if they don't like it. They're not that cruel, not like that U2 song back in the day. But it should give us a touch of higher exposure with people. So secondly, any VR or other implementations you want to release the book in, whatever format, we will do that. Yeah, Leon?
Yeah, let's keep in touch about that. I would be very interested in trying to somehow convert one of these formats you mentioned, and maybe I could write some kind of converter to convert it to a 3D model, which can then be also added to the list of formats.
3D model, that sounds really cool in that sense. Just as an aside, since you mentioned that, I put in a link now I wrote a tiny piece called BVR, which stands for Beyond Visual Range. It was supposed to be one of those, oh, let's inspire people, these things can happen, but it quickly became, oh, it's actually really hard to see into that future. So one of the few things I said was exactly that. We can have 3D models of text, and we don't know what that means.
I will check this out. And I had one more question. Yeah, actually for Alan. Did you suggest that there is times that there is not much happening and it's easy to predict the next step or what will happen? And there are times where there's too much things happening. You were mentioning that these days you have a feeling that you can't really predict what will happen now. Are you suggesting that there's some kind of like a sort of I don't know, like a inflating and deflating of being able to see the future?
I mean, that's a great topic. I mean, and of course, it's not anything that is empirical, right? There's I think, yeah, I would say that there are periods of higher volatility, and in the case of, there's always movements that are happening, right? But sometimes those movements are degrees of echo chamber excitement. For instance, Figma announced a lot of new cool features last week. That's neat, but that's going to change, like, I don't know how designers and developers do some things, but it's not going to necessarily change what's being built. In fact, it's only going to support the mentalities that are already in place of how things are built, right? It's only going to keep that process going. There are other movements like blockchain that seem really massive, but there's a lot of things that needed to be put in place first, in the same way with self-driving cars, where it's just, you realize that even though it's a big idea, it's not going to be operational effectively for maybe like a decade. I mean, a crazy thing. The techno-optimists really tend to get those kinds of things wrong. So I'm usually kind of hedge my bets on things like that. But with the changes in AI that have been rolling for the last year, I really think it is the kind of change that is going to force us to hopefully change our processes, to look back at how we actually, what apps even are, if they still need to be apps, what computing even is, right? And a darker current is that the kind of, I think, Peter, you mentioned this, sorry for hogging I'll hand it over to you in a second, but you mentioned this app for that mentality. And it's so true. There's been an increasing sort of enshittification where you have to buy a monthly subscription to a car. I mean, this is a little like get off my lawn kind of rant, but there are larger trends at play. And I feel like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe I just wasn't as plugged in, or maybe I was quicker, but it seemed easier to say, like, okay, this is where I think things are going to go next. This is what seems to be missing, and it's just a matter of time before it happens. So it may just be a personal statement. I don't have that much of a grasp now, except a feeling that there's going to be a very big shift. I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, that makes sense.
Peter.
Okay. What I'd really like to see is to have us move in that sort of an open doc direction. As you know, I've been in tooling hell for weeks upon weeks now. And once I get to the point that I have a workable experimentation substrate in place, I'd really like to have us all share that and use that for different development projects so that instead of having a bunch of little islands, we can have bridges between them, and all of our code experiments can be running on top of one single, well thought out meta platform that will work so that only one of us will have to go through this hell once, and then you can work at a higher level and know that, okay, somebody's already worked out all of the scripting to be able to build this thing into a Mac app, build it into a Windows app, Electron based. I've already provided all of the libraries that would be most useful. So now you can be thinking, okay, I have these nice high level libraries available to me. I don't have to think about the tooling side because somebody's already thought through that, and everyone in the community can be building on top of that tooling. I think it'd save a huge amount of time, and then one person can get delegated with keeping the platform itself up and running as version updates happen, and everyone else can just think about, again, building at the higher level for experiments, and they know that their experiments will be able to interoperate and play well with each other. So maybe that might actually be my topic for the paper for the next century of tech, just calling for that kind of platform infrastructure work to be done. And that would help get us out of the there's an app for that mentality, because instead it would be, I'm building a set of components that are going to interoperate with these components in the artisanal software kind of a mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fabian, you're next. But don't forget, tools in an open doc kind of environment can be brilliant, which is, of course, what was also said. Just wanted to highlight it.
So my initial reaction to that is skepticism, in the sense that I do have my own tooling. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not even saying it's better, but it's like nearly intimate. That being said, I would love to try. So if there is, let's say, a workshop where I can try, even if the conclusion is, and again, I'm being a bit skeptical there, that's not for me. There are definitely things I would learn in the process of trying. So I would definitely be up for like a session dedicated to whatever tool it is or whatever tooling it is, and being, let's say, gently taken by the hand to say, okay, we do this, we need, I don't know, 1 hour. The goal is to do this. We go through the steps. That's the install process or whatever. I'm always excited for workshops. I would definitely love to try whenever, without any rush or pressure. And I would argue for this kind of things before also starting to think about grand platform released and whatnot, in the sense that I imagine, with all due respect, it might not be perfect. Thus, with the feedback from us, let's say as potential user, maybe there are things that would be kinks that would be removed on the way to, let's say, a release proper. So I think that would be useful both ways.
I really like the workshop idea.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the kind of thing we need to discuss and get closer to. But if we can return a little bit to the next symposium, what do you guys want the symposium and the book to be? I would like it to be acknowledging the VR AR in a strong way. We did a lot of that last year, but now that we have the Apple one, which is great because it's real, but it's also scary because it's telling us how to do interface design, which is obviously why we did last year's volume to begin with. But I'm wondering how you guys want to address that. The reason I think it's still important is that actual real work still seems to be a periphery in there. There's an, oh, by the way, you can view your Mac screen. There isn't that much focus on that. It's like they're a little bit scared. Fair enough. Apple's really, really good at managing expectations. Like, I'm sure you've all seen the article explaining why they have the cable. It's managing expectations more than anything. You know, and in the future, they can have the processing down a cable and all of that stuff. So how can we work on explaining to people you can work in this environment? And do you think that that is something we should try to promote?
By that environment, do you mean the Apple specific ecosystem for the Vision Pro or something broader?
I'm just saying that I'm the kind of guy who, even as a teenager, I couldn't just fantasize about kissing a movie star. There had to be reality around it. So even with my dreams now of interaction stuff, I really cannot do, even though I'm supposedly creative, I cannot just do blue sky, everything is new thinking. It is always rooted in some kind of infrastructure, which is why I think infrastructure is so important. So currently, I think that there is much more openness on Quest, absolutely. But with the Vision Pro, the technology is just so far ahead. And I'm not saying we have to do one or the other, absolutely not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that we need at least take into account that the Vision Pro is light years ahead. So if we choose to talk about what can be done on web VR and so on for the Quest, or what can maybe be done on the Vision, that's fine. But we shouldn't ignore that it happens. I mean, I really want to get to a stage this time next year, one of our colleagues puts on a headset, the Vision Pro, and they do, oh, that's kind of neat. And then inevitably, what do I do? That we actually have an answer. It's like, well, hang on, you're doing this work thing. You can do that here, blah, blah, blah. You know, we're experimenting with. Rather than here's another game or a meditation or, you know, social thing or whatever. And this is not to sell Apple's headset for them. It's to sell the idea to everyone that VR, AR, whatever the heck it's going to be called, is the next stage, is an important part of the next stage of the future of text. In my BVR, by the way, that I sent the link to, I say the future of text is going to be VR, AR, and it's also going to be paper. So thank you, Alan. You know, it has to be all these multitudes of things. Sorry, that was very rambly, Fabian. Did it anyway address what you asked?
Kind of. I just want to, let's say, one advice is like to avoid the blue. I think the blue sky mentality is honestly a bad thing. From time to time, let's say, if you read, I don't know, science fiction, and then you let's say get inspired this way, why not? I think also then from time to time we need to build so that we see that the idea indeed are too far or they don't make sense or whatever. So I think honestly I think doing both is good. I would still argue though that it's not light years ahead because two things for the anecdote. Like I worked already on the HoloLens 2, the HoloLens 1, the Magic Leap. They all have eye tracking. They did not have very good hand tracking, but for example, I have the North Star XR, which is an open source headset which uses the hand tracking from Leap Motion, and it's really good. It's actually really good. Like you just like shake your fingers like this to cross a bit. I mean, it basically works. So I imagine you just take it, you either add another one or tilt it down or put like one on each side, etc. So the point is, and in terms of performance, let's say I have desktop VR. For the anecdote, I finished Half-Life Alyx, the video game, last week. I postponed it because it was like commented a lot of time as like the state of the art of gaming, and thus once you finish it, you're left in the dust, like with nothing else to do with your life. Sadly, I agree with that statement. It's really good. So I really also take the time to recommend everyone to play it. But if you're not a gamer, like it is an experience in itself. And in terms of all the user experience, it's really good. All that to say that if you take, let's say, the North Star XR, or if you take the HoloLens 2, if you plug this to a desktop VR, or even if you do it wirelessly, you have eye tracking, you have proper hand tracking. So it's the same thing, basically.
No. And here's Brundle to help me out.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Let's say the same thing is a little bit provocative. It is functionally equivalent.
No. Okay. So Brundle, so glad you're
Why
here
not?
because Fabian and I are having a fisticuff fight. I'm saying that okay, so I'm going more into research rather than just trying to sell software. It's just ridiculously difficult on the App Store. Within that, we're talking about the symposium and the book. who would like, if you'd like to be on the editorial panel to help recommend people, you're very welcome as per the email, etc. So Fabian and some people here were talking about what VR platform we're really talking about. And I said that, say hi.
Hello.
Okay, cool. I was just saying that it seems to me the Quest and so on may be more open in a sense, but I think we really need to take into account the Vision Pro, because to me, it is light years ahead. And Fabian says, well, it's functionally equivalent in a lot of different ways. The point I'm really making is the first iPhone was not necessarily better than the other phones, but it had that immediacy. I'm not even going to use the word intuitive, but immediacy, right? With a Vision, you put it on, you have your stuff, and you can do certain things. I think that is so huge. I think, Fabian, because I don't mean this as a backhanded compliment or anything sarcastic or anything, but in a way, you're too knowledgeable. You know, you can set up these things, you can build these things. The average knowledge worker will want to put a headset on, have tools. And I think that's where the Vision is different. Now, Randall, what I'd like you to comment on, any of that, of course, say whatever you like, but specifically the visual quality of the Vision Pro. Can you please compare it with the Quest Pro or the Quest 2, both in terms of field of view and clarity?
I think they said, I mean, you can read your phone through it without it having any sort of fancy pass-through. It's really astonishing. Yeah, I mean, not that it's one way or other. The original iPhone was objectively a garbage phone. It was bad at being a phone. Yeah, I would say use the web and bet on the web. I don't think you need to pick. I think things should be best for the web. And I intend to make sure that all of the capabilities and APIs that are necessary to make sure that the web is a first-class citizen for all of these platforms. And I'm in the room fortnightly with Meta on these various subjects. Encompasses all of our needs.
That's really good to hear. And there's a lot of comments about WebXR here in the chat, but also the device does matter. And not just in the visual quality and all of that, also in the sense of how you get information in and out of it. So Leon and I have been emailing a bit about the clipboard. So yes, you can always bring up a web browser and get into a VR view. That's fantastic, similar to the Quest, I'm sure. But it's still, once you get in and out of that, how do you move information around will be an interesting issue, of course. But really a little bit back to the kind of theme of today, which is our next symposium here in London and online, of course, but also the books. If there are any thoughts on where you want to steer the direction, all of the data for the books will be available in any format anybody wants. If they want to do a VR version or whatever, very welcome to do that. But yeah, any thoughts on that? I want to get this locked down, at least as to your preferences, guys, because as I have to admit, you're my huge asset. I'm so extremely grateful for this brain trust. So if I'm going to do something, it's really, really great to have your input first.
I will probably personally do the opposite of what I suggested last time. Namely, I was suggesting at some point that we use the book itself as an asset to iterate on. And I think that created a lot of friction, maybe the meta aspect, maybe the type of data structure, etc. So this time I might, but I probably will focus on something, either what I mentioned a few times already, like a computational notebook, immersive, but I would probably, let's say, keep the book as a book, potentially, let's say, the previous one as a data set, but yeah, I think intertwining everything last time was a little bit too demanding, and maybe using a past version, a bit like we discussed during the previous meeting with Kent about using recording as voice, and then ideas on how to do indexing, search, etc. on it. But yeah, that's probably will be my process to make a piece for it. Maybe probably interactive, maybe also just ideas, because I admit it's also liberating sometimes not to implement a prototype or a concept, but just basically think aloud and get feedback on it. I still probably will want to make a prototype out of it, just because that's the way to verify and then eventually build on it and think further. But my process will be the opposite of last time and not use the current version as data. Even though, again, I think, as you suggested, to make it available in whatever format we can work on is definitely valuable. But I might suggest honestly to stick to it too much or use the previous version, because it felt maybe too demanding last time.
We do have 3 previous books, and I will provide them. The first one is in Illustrator. The other one.
InDesign.
Thank you. And that's just a mess. I mean, it looks nice, but it's a mess in terms of being the same as the other one. So I will be spending this week converting it to the same. So if someone wants to take that as a data set and extract things, if you want to run AI on it and take out specific views or whatever, that's fine. It may be a very good idea to keep this new one clean, keep that completely separate, sure. I'm not saying that we have to do anything like that, but I'm saying the opportunity is there, and I make absolutely no comments about how it's done. Anything you want to do will be fine. Brandel.
So in terms of the theme, it sounds like you are relatively open about what you would expect to try to pull people into. So hopefully it's relatively clear that my motivation for pulling the future of text generally toward virtual reality, last year and the year before, was in order to have some group of people think seriously about the way that text manipulation is a serious subject of investigation within virtual reality. Like if you think about what people thought about what display did to text prior to my joining in comparison to now, hopefully at least some people believe that there are things to do with platforms like Vision Pro, but also elsewhere in general, like you've got a Quest Pro and these other things. So I guess for me, the question is, where are we now? What do we need people to think about and look at? And I think some of that work is done, in that there are at least some people who are aware that display matters a great deal. Vision Pro is still not out and not available, and won't be by the time the symposium rolls around, but hopefully, everybody's aware that it'll be really important once it's available. I mean, if there's one thing that I would say isn't necessarily front of mind, is the manipulability of text, the way in which these dynamic displays and particularly the multimodal inputs of hands can be brought to bear against the nature of text. So, but that's not necessarily something that is exclusively important within virtual reality, but it is something that is substantially improved It looks like you've done talking, so your hand will be lowered automatically in 5 seconds. Just AI is attempting to, no, so I'm still, if you don't mind, I'll keep saying things. That manipulability in whatever form, but not limited, not least in virtual reality, is something that I would love to figure out how to have people push on. I guess view specs, the multimodality that's available as a result of digital displays. So yeah, if there's anything, any way of pulling folks toward that, then that would be my kind of vote.
Okay, no, that's good, and all the interaction things are good as well. I also think WebXR is good, but I really think a key thing has to be someone puts the headset on, so, oh my God, I can get work done. I don't know what Apple's doing with their pages for vision and things like that, although that'll be interesting to see. Obviously, we will mentally compete with them. But the key has to be, our community doesn't like lock-in, obviously. So how can these different things go between each other? So even just having like a more work on WebXR JSON standards or whatever will be worthwhile. Just somewhere you can take it with you.
Yeah.
Peter,
As far as I'm aware, there's no.
sorry, Brandon, what?
I was just going to say that, like, in terms of the capabilities and cross-platformness, not only is there not sort of an Android or sort of a Quest toolkit for UI, and it's not compatible with Vision Pro. I don't believe any other platform has like the idea of apps and buttons and windows available in any kind of programming environment. Quest simply doesn't work like that. They haven't actually built a platform in the sense that you can build an app in the same way that you have views and text fields and things like that as you do in Vision Pro. So unfortunately, the reason for lock-in there is not that there are some fundamental incompatibilities between the way of building simple apps for VR in other platforms. It's that there are no simple ways for building apps in other VRs and VR and other platforms, unless you want to go down the Unity route, which is not a document system. You can bash it into that shape, but it is not fundamentally that shape. So yeah, in that instance, WebXR is the closest to a thing that, like, even cross-platform aside, that is by far and away the closest way that Quest has to give you a document-centric app. And I say that without particular triumphalism. It's a shame for that platform that they haven't done that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Peter.
I'm sorry, actually, Peter, just on that, just 1 second, please. Just like with when the iPad came out, so many apps needed to be on the iPad as well. So like, oh, I don't have my Mac with me, I need it on the iPad. It's going to be the same thing with VR. No one's going to work in VR exclusively. Well, very few people. So the whole idea of having an actual piece of work, text or otherwise, in and out of VR will be crucial. It's just so insanely important that that's possible. So that's why if I can do it, I will build author and reader for Vision Pro, and in a way that can go into the WebXR environment. But it has to be everywhere. Otherwise, it's just toys. Sorry, Peter. We really need to get better at separating.
Talking while muted. Okay, I was wondering, Brando, will there be any way to define gestures by example at a high level with respect to the hand tracking? Could I say, my symbol 1, make the gesture, and then be able to refer to it as symbol 1, as opposed to having to code somewhere, right hand joint number 16, angle between 41 and 47 degrees, joint 7, angle such and such, and specify it out at a low level? Or will I just be, again, do an example, Vulcan hand sign, and then have it recognize at a high level abstract, generate an event at a conceptual level whenever you see a Vulcan hand sign, so I don't have to think about any of the low level hand tracking issues?
So I'm not aware of the official APIs in this regard. So I don't know whether there's official support for that, but I do know that a friend of mine did it in WebXR, and it's perfect. So I would expect that it's the sort of thing that is probably pretty easy to do. I will say most applications are not going to be requesting full hand tracking. So the way that it works is actually pretty abstract. You look at something and you pinch to select and move it around, but the application gets neither the position of your hands nor the direction of your eyes. It just gets that an interaction happened on that object, and then there is a translation in relative terms from here to here. But it doesn't know that your hands are here and that they end here. It just knows that there was that vector occurring. You can ask for more in the same way that iPhone and web apps have the ability to request additional entitlements such that you can get things like full hand tracking. You can never get full hand tracking. But they need to be asked for, and so then the hope is that that's a relative rarity based on the actual nature of need within the context of an application that people are making use of that. But that's nothing new. It's nothing any different to this platform or any others. So yes, but it would probably be best for it to be couched in a context where it seems to be valuable enough. Or there is some sense in which there is this, like you sort of say, a higher level API or system that allows people to make use of these manual trainings for the purposes of saying, like, I don't care what hands are doing. I just want to care if hands are doing this. You know?
Exactly.
And that, and I could see that becoming. I mean, that seems like an interesting thing to do. I'm not aware of any particular capability like that.
Oh, also, I was wondering, are there going to be any 3D fonts, or are we imagining text as just being a perfectly flat plane, or could we have the text envisioned as maybe each glyph being on a separate square of paper that might be able to rotate with respect to what angle you're looking at it from? Or are they actually going to model three-dimensional letter forms so that you can make them a little bit more legible when you're looking at oblique angles?
I think the initial sort of model for page for application interaction is pretty conservative. It sounds more pejorative than I mean. It's that the model is that these are 2.5D apps. I think I've said this before, like that you happen to be able to arrange arbitrarily within your space. And so for the most part, information is understood to be, and the operating system, again, in the documents, in the public media, arranges itself quite intentionally to be right in front of you, and angled to be orthogonal to your view, so that you're always looking at it straight on. You do have the ability to get around the side of it, and it's very well rasterized and tessellated for that purpose, but there haven't been any accommodations to make it sort of legible from side on. And the HI guidelines, as presented in the design videos, say that it's better for type not to be rendered in any kind of perspective-y or extruded ways. And so I'm not aware of what native capabilities, because I don't spend much time in native. I don't know what people have bothered doing in terms of making things easy with things like procedural shapes. But yeah, you know, in the web, it's possible to create 3D extruded type and things, and which I've done on birthday cakes and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know that there's been any particular accommodation for being able to create perspective extruded beveled type for the purposes of legibility, beyond possibly there being a very simple procedural geometry library of the kind that you would expect to be able to build cubes and primitives and potentially very, very limited capacity for extrusions of arbitrary vector paths. But again, like, it's just what I do. I actually don't know whether it's in the OS.
Thanks so much.
So on the reading, so Adam made a really cool reading system that could have the text floating, but also be locked to your head, which I didn't get to test it, but I think you said, Adam, it was actually quite pleasant, lying back on a chair or whatever, you could read anywhere you want. We shouldn't be afraid of being too simple. So even working and experimenting with the most pleasant way you could possibly read a document in VR with a source that's easily accessible from the outside, I think could be an amazing thing in and of itself. Very often it's hard to find peace to read. Not everyone's got a garden to sit in with no loudness and things going on. So that could also be very worthwhile. I don't know if you have a specific perspective on that, Adam.
Just to answer Peter's thing, I tried 3D text quite a lot now, with letting text flow out in different curves and readability from different angles and so on. It's quite hard to envision how it looks on Vision Pro or similar high resolution devices, because I only have my Quest 2 to work with. So it will be interesting to try it with higher fidelity devices, but it feels like there are there are many things you could do to get readability, better readability in 3D and from different angles, because I imagine that we can't have everything just constantly repositioned to our current location. We need to anchor things, and then readability at an angle or even backwards, because suddenly for the first time ever, maybe we can get to read text floating in space backwards as well. What happens when you see the backside of text? And that is quite hard to for simple labels, you could just mirror it, so you always look, but for text that is connected, you can't just mirror a text backward from the backside. So you need to really find a new kind of a typography for, and of course we have the ideas of turning text towards you, but in a multiplayer environment, it gets very tricky. If I have text turn towards me, what should you see when you look at the same text? Because, or else I will point to the wrong things because it has turned towards you as well with a different angle. So many interesting challenges, and I think that could be a big thing that we could contribute, because I don't see that much public experimentation with that currently. Over.
Okay, that just gave me a great idea. Maybe for the backside, we wouldn't be interested in reading the text per se for content, but we could color code the letter forms on the backside to provide a layer of metadata. So you'd look behind it to be able to see some sort of categorization or some importance rating rendered with brightness level or something along those lines. So the front view could be for reading the text, and then flip it around to the back view to scan the metadata, where you wouldn't be interested in the actual content. You might just want to grab one of the selection ranges and then flip it back around to go back to reading mode.
But what would be the difference from actually having some sort of interaction to flip that back and forth? Does that have to do with the backside, really? Is it important that
I could see two people
on
working
a conceptual
conceptually,
backside?
Conceptually, I could see two people collaborating with each other, one looking at it from the front side, editing the text, and the other person looking at the backside, giving feedback based upon the metadata overlay encoded with color.
Another view on this is that you could have a special working space in front of you that is your view, where you peek into distant objects. So you have a kind of a magnifying glass or telescope thing. So you're both in the same room with the similar objects, but you also have kind of a working set just for you in front of you, with the perfect readability adjusted for you, and that so you bring kind of a lens into the content as well.
Oh, that's interesting. So basically, we want to have a multi-party view spec, so that you could have separate view specs specified based upon whether you're the first person interacting with it or whether you're second person or third person.
Yeah, I mean, I think one challenge with view specs in a multi-party environment is, what do you do to preserve the intent of sort of mutually legible user actions? Like people are saying, like, if I'm pointing to something but it actually resides in a different place, is there a redirection that an intermediating system has in order to say, like, well, that intent actually pertains to that object, so I'm going to retarget the joint angles in order to say that Adam is pointing to this window because we know that it's there. And so there's some really interesting, and it's really similar to some of the the problems that people have had in CSS as it's grown to hopefully adequately accommodate right to left languages, where we used to talk about margin left and we need to talk about margin start, because if it's to do with the linguistic sort of tendency to precede the paragraph, then it needs to be on the right rather than on the left at this point. So, and same thing with a responsive page layout, is that you need to be able to kind of flow things around and design them in such a way as they look good with all of the spatial constraints that somebody has. But at this point, they're still sort of limited to, like, this page is just being contorted and twisted for my benefit, I don't need to come up with the mapping from my particular view of it to yours. Something that I realized immediately, I don't know if I showed you guys the auto peer, the zero effort peer coordination thing I put on CodePen. Oh yeah, I did. And you played with it, Adam. Yeah. It's fun, and I did put it on some type, but I immediately realized that like there's no analog to go like I'm selecting this text because my cursor is here. Like I can try to shepherd through the actual metrics of the glyph selections and stuff like that, but it's a very non-trivial problem. Like Google Docs level of complexity aside, simply to be able to say like Brandel is selecting this text and having those selections line up, let alone lining them up with the cursor. So there's a lot ahead, but I think that it's I would say my pick of the place where the complexity is interesting and important and difficult and rewarding.
So for shared environments, I think it's maybe even more important to go the non-responsive way and non-personalized way, and to be sane when designing the systems, to actually share the environment as much as possible for the main objects, at least so and more generally for a future of text presentation or for the symposium, if I would pick a project, it would be to design an article or a small selection of articles that are native to 3D text, that starts from interactive 3D text and potentially being able to project it down onto a book or paper or article, and not doing it the other way around, starting with the article and trying to move it up. I think we're more free to think if we don't start with a 2D article and try to place it in the. I don't see so much value coming out from that. It needs to be done, but that is a bit more limiting, I think. Yeah. Over.
Leon, is it on the same topic or are you going somewhere else? Because I have a follow-up to the guys.
It's the same topic.
Oh, please
But,
go ahead. No.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, I have a question actually for all of you, but I will just ask it to Brandel, who mentioned text manipulation. And that is a great word, but also a great scope. And I was thinking if there are any thoughts on priorities, because I can imagine that if you go focus on let's say authoring of text in VR, that's a whole adventure on itself. That I'm starting to think about, things like a style sheet or an immersive style sheet or something, or a file format. But if I think about not authoring but reading text, then I also see a whole big adventure ahead where segmenting and sort of rearranging text spatially becomes the focus. Like, for example, a timeline VR is, I think, a big, a nice example of how text can be sort of segmented or placed. And there is a certain, you pinch your finger and then you can control how, like that's also a whole adventure. And I was thinking, like, is there also a smart prioritization between these things? Because I'm a bit confused. Like, I don't know what would be the most logical first step to focus on. So basically authoring versus reading.
Well, from my experience, reading is a lot easier technically to experiment with, because your changes are not necessarily recorded and undoable and all of that. We're talking about views, but that's just having worked on author and reader and paid a lot more for author. So Well, as we go through this, Peter, do you have updated plans on getting a headset, or are you going to wait till the Vision next year? We still don't know how to lip read, Peter. We do need more training.
Oh, sorry about that. I'll wait for the Vision to come out next year, and then as soon as I can actually try one on and know for sure that I'm not going to spill my cookies if I wear it, then we'll get into it.
I still have my Quest 2, and the Pro. So if you want me to send it too, because it's quite a few of the things you ask, once you put the actual headset on and it's no longer theoretical, becomes something very different. So I think you would really benefit from feeling the text like that. It's very, very, very different. We all need to invest in each other. So if you want to borrow it for a while, you're very, very welcome. Brandel, you don't have the Vision at home, do you?
Not today.
Well,
No,
can you please have it on a Monday so at least you can hold it for us?
I'm not allowed to show people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not allowed to show people. Well, you wouldn't be able to see it recorded. People who come to my house are allowed to see it. Yeah.
Well, there are flights to America, apparently.
Yeah.
But just a last question on the Vision. We know the pixel density is really, really good, but what about the field of view? How wide does it feel? I don't care about numbers, but compared to a Quest 2.
It feels really wide. It's one of the things that's been really interesting is the various levels of hyperbolic excitement that reviewers have had for seeing through it and saying it's exactly like it's just goggles. And some people actually did the demo and thought it was literal sort of transparent AR, which it is not. And so obviously it's a video feed that you're seeing, but it is not distorted. So MKBHD did a much better job of kind of describing it. It's the things are where they should be, even though the cameras are not where your eyes are. There's a tremendous amount of work to make sure that is sort of coherent and consistent. So if you pull it down, it's that way, and you pull it up, everything's where it is. There's a remarkable level of continuity with your experience. But yeah.
Yeah, that's perfection. Ellen, I thought you had your yellow hand up. Is that right?
Oh, I did. Yeah, it was. I don't remember exactly why, but kind of related. But this it may not be. But this is what I've been tinkering with, and it'll probably be what I might pursue or discuss. But it's the motivation is this getting tinkering with analog spatial computing, which is sort of an intentional joke, but I've been using this scroll for a little while and putting my notes on it, and seeing the sort of drift of thoughts, and now I'm starting the process of taking a photo, snapping it, and then working on digitizing it, either in the form of the TL Draw API or essentially trying to take a step back from AI and from VR to see if there are if we've left things behind in just the simple experience of writing or drawing or just working with paper. Are there things here that could be valuable to try and find to push for when working in VR? I don't know. It seems like a lot of times we get excited about the technology, and then that means that we have to become experts in the constraints of the technology, and then we may lose our initial frame, and it may be a lot easier to get some things done. It may be easier to write, or there may be new opportunities to write in VR that are not page-like at all, you know. So that's that kind of analog tabletop version of things is where my head's been at lately, and I bring it up just to, I'd like to get more opinions and more ways to think about it and see how it could, you know, become relevant. Yeah.
Why don't we have a full hour on that Monday week on exactly that? Because part of the problem with our group is that all these great ideas and questions, perspectives pop up, and they're kind of lost in 2-hour sessions. So for me, I would really like it if we say this hour transcribed as this will be that, because you're talking about something really, really important. And, you know, there's so many angles to this. You know, what display did you use to do the downward view, by the way?
Oh, here, I'll send you a picture of it. I got this great mount, and I put my older iPhone on it. So let me just share my screen and I'll show you what it looks like. There, share. So this is my iPhone and just a little overhead cam, and I'm still working on how to, like, I think my next bit is going to be a voice command for the camera to take a snapshot and then send the photo to a folder, so that I can then some of the range of experiments go from, can I train a model to, I mean, already live text can see some of the text, but it doesn't know how to make sense of why these things are spaced the way they are. So if I could get some sort of model that can understand these words are clustered together for a reason, or at the very least object recognition, to try and, like, I don't know, it's wide open, and I'm not trying to go straight to the ML version of things. I'm mainly just seeing what can be done in the analog sense. I also got this cat printer, so I can start printing out QR codes of the corresponding writings that I'm doing per day, and then just throw that little sticker down onto the scroll, so I can get a trace back to thoughts and links. Anyway.
No, it's really
amazing.
important. Oh, sorry, but you know, with the Mac displays, there is a built-in function to go down, which is not.
Yeah, I didn't want that.
Yeah, it's not as high quality as this, because this is using the full iPhone. But you know, I really don't want this to be just a side conversation. It's too important, because you know, I could imagine easily you're reading a book, physical paper book, you do an underline, you put it under this thing, and without even talking to it, it analyzes, finds what book it is, quite easy. And then if you have a PDF version of whatever, it takes your annotations into that environment too. If you are working on paper like this, you put your headset on and you have an overlay of exactly what that is. So you can choose to make a mural of it. The opportunities are absolutely phenomenal, right? To have that paper and multi, so we really just have a full session on it.
Fabian, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
So I'm warning in advance. I'm going to be fakely provocative. Of course, we need to drop everything and only be in the headset. That's the only way forward. No, the joke is because, as an anecdote, so I was saying before, I was playing Half-Life Alyx the last couple of weeks. Amazing. I put the link in the chat, etc. But one of the very special thing, what I thought was amazing, is I was with my big controllers and my full-on desktop VR, even with a cable for the real experience. And I was playing, and it's amazing. And then I got some food delivery because I ordered online and got my fridge full, basically. And I was able to pop out the headset, go in front of the house, welcome the guy, and then bring my stuff in the fridge, and then go back in the headset. My whole point with this anecdote is, like, absolutely not going to drop the whole physical world behind. I also do a bunch of stuff on paper, on e-ink, etc. So I'm 100% for this kind of experimentation, in the sense that, yeah, it's not replacing an old medium. So we need to, as you said, explore what things were left behind, because we're not bringing only good stuff in XR or whatever the new media might be, and in a lot of context. Like, I just have other like old school physical book on my desk, which I bring on my old school physical couch, which I put like a little how do you say, physical bookmark in it, and I love it. So I think it's I find it completely silly to even at any point assume that, yeah, because there is a new medium, we must do everything with it. And indeed, this kind of exploration, like, what's still stuck in it, and also it's just like, it works as is. It brings the opportunity. You blend it with new things like the little printer and the QR code, so having some link back. So I think it's really great, and it's an amazing example of not going back for the, how do you say, doing everything in the emerging medium, because, yeah, you lose so many things with the new affordances, like even just the tacticality and the sound of the paper when you fold it, when you roll it. Yeah, I have an emotional response to this, because it's such, like, I hear this so often, like in quote unquote debates or arguments about emerging technologies, like, oh, are we going to spend our whole life in XR? It's like, are you living your whole life in a tablet? Are you not using paper? I mean, just stupid. It's really stupid. It does piss me off, honestly. But yeah, it's just so 100% for this kind of exploration. Again, also, I cannot help also but want to blend both. So when you put the QR code in it, I cannot help but imagine some kind of augmented version when you have, either with your phone or a headset, some of digital overlay on top of the physical paper. So yeah, it instantly gives, like, open up a lot of doors for plenty of new ideas.
Yeah, I don't know if you have dabbled with a Pico projector before, but they're really good. You would probably need to have it a little bit back of it in order to be able to get an adequate throw. This is a Kodak P150. It's like 160 bucks or something like that, but it's interesting. It's a bit small. So one thing that you could do is actually add like servo motors to be able to direct it to different parts of your document. But then that also made me think it would be pretty cool just to have a laser pointer on 2D servo motors, because then you'd be able to get it to kind of point at various points of your thing. If you have the wherewithal to
what is that again? Can you? It's a
this
printer?
guy is a. This is a Pico projector. So this is a small micro projector. This is like 75 lumens. It's a pretty small little guy. But it's pretty cool. But yeah, I was looking around to see if anybody has any kits for like 2D guided lasers. But I don't. Oh, and Fabian's got a better one there. But yeah, because I think actually even a laser would be super interesting to be able to kind of just meander around on your document, because you would also be able to give it the field of like the freedom of motion to be able to kind of reach any particular part. So if you had like imaging, arguably cameras are going to be easier to put on a system than projection on a system today. So if you had the ability to know a coherent spatial model of the entire document, then you'd be able to kind of point your laser in various places to be able to kind of.
Right. I mean, yeah, I would love to assemble. Sorry, go ahead. Apologies, I interrupted. Where you were just saying the pointing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I would love to assemble just like even a list of the possible experiments, because I've only thought of like a few, right? But what I want to get to a point is like, if I can draw something out, have the camera or projector, well, camera in this case, recognize that symbol, and similar to an April tag. I'm drawing some inspiration from Folk Computer, and will probably wind up paying to get to set it up in like Python with a projector. So it's great to know about the Pico projector. That's awesome. I don't want to I'm not interested in the moment in doing programs on a tabletop the way they are, but I want to see if content could be manipulated digitally and analog sort of simultaneously. So
Yeah.
April tag is an AR tag, kind of AR tag. A QR code is another kind of AR tag. Sorry, augmented reality tag. This is great. Pico Portable, perfect. And then the fully print.
So briefly, yes, I have yet another gadget. I have an argument for it for the Pico projector. It's because it allowed me to toss my physical TV. I had a big 55 inch or big, I guess 50 or 65 inches. I forgot Samsung screen, which I don't use as a TV, but literally just as a screen, and it worked well. But the problem is when it's off, you have this slab of blackness in your middle of your living room. And I think in terms of being, let's say, prompted to just read a book, listen to music, whatnot, it's not great. And I had some friends and colleagues who did the same. This, you can have very fancy one. This one is 500 euros, I think, or something like this. It's 500 lumens, so I don't need to be like in complete darkness. And this morning, so it just works in terms of replacing the TV. It has like 2 or 3 hours of battery. You just put it down and you project basically. And it has Android on it, so I was able to install VLC, which takes my movie from my Raspberry Pi. It has all the data in there. Just use the remote to work. I also use my little laser pointer remote so that I can highlight things during the movie. It's to be a little bit pedagogical during a documentary on this kind of things. And just this morning, because I started to get a little bit serious with roller skating, so I went to a class, or I did a class yesterday. I really love it. It's a lot of fun. It forces me to go out. I'm waiting for the lungs to do this with XR also, so that I can like train with Mario Bros or whatever Gomba's experience. But I mentioned the video projector because this morning, in order to improve my skating, I did some yoga. It was yoga for roller skating, and I was just dropping it like this and projecting on the ceiling because I was on the floor on the yoga mat in my living room, and I cannot like bend in every direction to look at the teacher because I still suck at it. I don't know the name of the poses and all that, but then you can just like orient wherever you need the thing. And yes, without also a headset, because when you're getting sweaty from doing this exercise, it is not ideal. But yeah, it opens up for, I think, a reasonable amount, a reasonable price, let's say, a lot of possibilities. And yeah, I was thinking of doing this around my screen and say, when I'm reading a book, not discussing with you, but I'm reading a book, I'm on my treadmill to walk, but then I want a kind of evolving landscape around it. So I would project around the screen, not on the screen, and have a kind of moving environment that more or less matches the pace of what I'm reading. So it opens up a lot of different possibilities, and also that can be collaborative because you project. So if you're 2 or 3 in the room, yeah, you don't need 2 or 3 headsets. So I recommend tinkering with this kind of gadgets.
That's awesome.
Too.
Right. So along the lines of what I said earlier, it's really nice that we have these discussions, but there are 2 things I think are kind of important. One of them is having them in a way so they're findable in the future, which is why I really propose we try to do sometimes, like maybe next Monday, at least an hour themed on this, because we have well over 100 of these, and it's not going to be that findable. So that's one thing I'm a bit concerned about. The other thing is I'd really like to hear more about what you guys. What is this new button on taking the hand down? Stop it. Is how you feel about the book and the symposium, not just how to view it, but do you have any other thoughts on that? I don't want to get too close to the symposium and find out there were specific thoughts, directions, and so on. We shouldn't obviously spend all these meetings just on editorial, of course not. But this might as well be a good point as any.
Certainly have thoughts on that. Yes.
Spilled beans.
It's I mean, so part of it is related to the kind of eternal struggle, right? But cracking the process for extracting the good content from these conversations, from articles or whatnot, and it kind of came out in the last talk. Really enjoyed that talk, the Kent By in your question about like who is this for, right? And I think the coming up with some sort of something that's not too formal, something that's still open to spontaneity or synchronicity, whatever, but something that can extract high level ideas, or before you approach this, here's some things you may want to check out, to like, so you're not just diving into the deep end. I mean, so much of this content is diving into someone's deep end, and so if there's an experiment I'd love to try with the latest book, it would be to go really heavy-handed on the editorial side of things, and see if a variety of experiences, or a plurality of views, view spec version of the book would be palatable.
It would be really, really fun to do. The problem with that is, as we discovered really much last year, if we ask contributors to do anything, even including a few keywords about what they're writing, they just won't do it. It's absolutely crazy how people don't want to provide things in a more specified thing. So maybe this is where we look at various what?
Go ahead.
No, it's relevant.
I'm holding this up for Peter. It's called a biography of the pixel. It's an excellent in-depth history of all of computing from the aspect of the pixel. That's it. So great book. Anyway, continue, Fred.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, what we had a year ago was Brandel's Magic Carpet and a few other things that were really interesting perspectives. And I'm not saying we should do the same this year or try to incorporate the book necessarily at all. But okay, let me just ask a few yes or no questions. Do you agree that the main focus on the book should be VR and AI this time? And by AI, by the way, I mostly think not AI, tell me, I ask a question, give me a factual answer. I think that's a bit whatever. I'm thinking more of using AI for views and AI for perspectives and things like that. Was that a comment or a yes?
I'd like to comment on that. I think maybe I think a focus on new intuitions would be very interesting. I'm reading right now Stephen Wolfram's A New Kind of Science, and it's his deep dive into cellular automata and his feeling that all of physics can be explained through very simple programs, and it's a pretty compelling argument. And even if it's not true, or not, it may be true but not useful, there's all these things. The interesting part of it that I believe I agree with is that he said there's nothing preventing these discoveries from happening 4,000 years ago. He's literally just doing math, like tiny little dots of math, and then creating these complex structures. But he's not surprised it didn't happen, because there's a degree of technology that's kind of needed to get through this grunt work, but it totally could have happened, right? And what he's calling for now is a new intuition to match. So like, if anything, his book is an inspiration of, oh, here's a totally new way to look at the world, right? And it's aided by his ability to crunch a lot of simple programs. That being a kind of an inspiration for, we have all these new programs and tools now are new intuitions falling out of that, or if we took a step back from the actual implementation focus to, and this is sort of what we do in the circle, you know, so maybe it's not a great topic, but I think there's a new intuition that's coming up when about like how to code with AI, or how to write with AI, or how to X with AI. And then of course, these new capabilities that we haven't even been able to fathom yet until we get our hands on a Vision Pro, that will lead to new intuitions. But I don't know. I like that kind of angle more than the purely technical or instrumental, but there's value to that too, because you need a lot of times the technical to get to that new intuition. Anyway.
I really like that a lot. One of the things I have been doing is reminding myself that the work I'm doing is not really for academic students. It is for people who want to help to use text to communicate and think. I also have been working on a notion of spark points, which is what gave rise to the liquid tool that I have. So I think two things falls out of what you said. Of crying out loud, well, Zoom have this new little option thing here. It's so bizarre. First of all, yes, it is good not to make VR, AI, or whatever buzzword technology the driving force. That's nice. We can say we are particularly researching these new emerging environments, but not exclusively. So that then becomes a like a subheading, so to speak. But also, what I think would be really, really good, I'm counting all of you as editorial members, whether you want it or not. I'll only put you on the website if you say you want to be on the website, but in terms of our dialogue here, it would be really nice if you come up with a proposed topic. Like, Alan, if you could email me the way you like that to be phrased, maybe when we invite people, these can be prompts from them, you know, in the old-fashioned word, not for AI, but for humans. That would be really, really good. Does that make sense, that we can all feel free to put something on that website saying, how about this aspect or that aspect, right? The reason I'm saying this is not just because I think what Alan said is really good. It's also that Alan and Adam, that you don't write anything, and that is okay. It is hugely frustrating, but it is okay. So maybe we can distill some of your contributions, which are so valued, into a single sentence prompt. Alan saying what he said now is worth an entire article. So if we have that on there, here are the kinds of things we're thinking about for this book. Single sentence is fine, doesn't have to be a whole article. Done. Does that make sense? Do we have some sort of agreement roughly? That's okay? We have one finger up, or thumb, not a finger, Edgar tells me. All right, cool. Brendel, over to you.
So similar to the way that obviously Apple introduced Vision Pro by not really talking about virtual reality. Said augmented reality once because ARKit was the sort of the precursor and predecessor of all of this stuff. But after that, it went all in on the term spatial computing. Rather than saying that what this is about is VR and AI, and also Apple also didn't mention AI a single time in its keynote. And the reason for that, if you watch the Daring Fireball podcast interview, whatever that guy shows, calls it, he like Craig Federighi says, we don't call it AI because that's not what it is to the user. We call it autocorrect, and we call it dynamic stickers, and we call it the things that it means for people. And in the same way, that was very aptly applied to virtual reality as well. It's to do with they called it spatial computing. So and the way that I introduced VR to this group a couple of years ago was to say, like, what would you do with more space? What is it that you do with having an environment in which stuff happens? Yeah, spatial text, spatial reading spaces. I think that has a lot of really important sort of tie-ins, analogs to Alan's analog spatial computing. I think it would be really great for people to just think about what space does to those things. It was interesting you were saying, Frode, about the way that reading is easier to do programming for, and it definitely is. But I think that's partly because of the unpacking that you do, like the construction of meaning by virtue of reading and parsing different pieces is substantially sort of internalized and interior to your head. You're not cutting a book apart on a page on a table and getting to understand it in a literal sense. But Alan's workspace does, to me, suggest ways in which people could really genuinely do that. And certainly my browser history while I'm reading something dense is a lot like that. It's the spilling out of those contents into the things that have particular relevance and interest to me. And so I think there's a lot there that can be kind of picked over in terms of how to use space in all of the spaces that are inadvertently sort of turned over to the task of reading. The way that the functions are sort of tied directly to that specific set of actions. So another thing, Alan, that would be interesting for you to do is toy with like recording just heaps and heaps of data, like a full video feed over the entire duration of working on something, and what you get out of that, even if it's very low quality. Just being able to kind of have the confidence of your convictions to record it all for the benefit of being able to see what's there would be really neat.
Like a Loom
VR
thing?
and AI.
I like that approach. They talk about just like recording with the overhead camera and just kind of go through the process or something.
Yeah, and to be able to see what it is that you get, what are the gestures, what are the things that are kind of legible and knowable about your actions over that space and that time. I think there would be a lot there, and that's what's really drawn me to Jim Holland's work on context restoration as well. Just the idea that now that we have ubiquitous, like we just have such phenomenal recording capabilities, we should figure out how that we can bring them to bear against what we do. And it's sort of Froda's point of like, we have so much stuff recorded, but so little capacity to reach into it. I think having actually, ironically, recording more and thinking, really looking at it as a reflective component of it might help us figure out what ways we can kind of extract insights from it. But sorry,
Oh, I can see the rest of you, but not Brandel so well. Oh, there he is. What were you saying at the end, Brandel? Sorry, lost you a little bit.
VR and AI as a central theme. The main thing that I would go to is like, Apple didn't say VR or AI. There are reasons for that. Are there other sort of frames that people can have over it? I think reading.
Oh, you're cutting out again.
Something happens this time of day. So
you said reading is where
reading spaces.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Now, in terms of structuring the work, I would really like, as I've said a million times, something to illustrate, oh my gosh, I can work here. But also, I think we need to help people really look far into the future. That's why I wrote the BVR article, really brief, but it's beyond visual range. And of course, it mirrors VR. So it's partly a joke on that. So yeah, reading spaces. Yeah, spaces. I mean, spatial computing, I don't think is a good term at all, but it's better than all the other terms. I think at some point very soon, people will just talk about headset. Like the
word spatial cognition is a possible thing that doesn't have to be computing per se. It could be just thinking with spaces, but it might be too watered down.
Yeah, I'm just thinking what consumers will say. I mean, it's kind of funny. Anyway, that's just a language thing. But yeah, Leon, I agree with what you said, Randall, and thank you. And Leon, please.
Yeah, on this, I was thinking, is it maybe possible that we could settle on some high-level theme words? So we have like the lower level keywords like AI, VR, and we might want to not mention them too often. And as Alan already hinted, like it could be really good to have something which is a bit more in the Wolfram, in your BVR direction. And so I can imagine that it can be interesting to read a book which is not just some separate stories of a bit about VR, somebody talks about AI, blah, blah, blah. But I could imagine that it's much more interesting if there is a certain theme. And I was thinking, like would the theme, do you have a theme in mind? Or like sometimes you talk about knowledge sharing, and I just heard the words reading spaces and spatial cognition. Is that maybe is it maybe good to have some handles like that, or some keywords which the people who are gonna write some text, and I'm actually also willing to do that. So I'm interested, but yeah, it would be very helpful to have a bit of a some words to which I can kind of like reference to, so that the whole book will also be a bit coherent instead of some separate stories.
Yes, absolutely. I just put the link in. I have put down 4 things, but that is only to provoke you guys. It is really, really important that you all feel, whether you want to be listed or not, feel real ownership of changing these things and arguing with me. It is really, really important that we do something relevant. So one of the issues I have is, on one side is text, and the other side is kind of knowledge stuff. I'm really holding a strong candle to text because hardly anyone else is doing so. Of course, other media are super important, no question about it. And of course, text plus other stuff is important. I just don't want us to immediately go over to a title or something like knowledge management and spatial relationships or whatever, because that gets both detailed and specific. But please feel free to, similarly to what we talked about with Alan, tell me a theme for the book, and maybe we will have separate sections and make it a bit clearer. Maybe that will be the theme of the whole book. All I'm saying is VR and AI, with whatever names, are opening up new opportunities. But as Alan has shown amply, we shouldn't forget the old, including paper. And all this is to do is to provoke people into, I wrote this important person email thing that is way up in our chat here. I was saying there's hardly an investment in text. And it's partly because it's really, really hard for the imagination bit. And I think that's what our group can do really well. We can put provocations out there that make people go, oh, that's brilliant, I must do it. Or that's absolutely ridiculous, let me show them why. Either way, it's fine, as long as it provokes, right? I think that, I will be exercising more editorial control this time. It's been gone through changes. The books have had different reasons for existing. And, if we can do more theme stuff, great. And we absolutely do not need to do any kind of VR version of the book. Absolutely not. But if anybody wants to extract stuff and do, of course you can. I also think it's useful for us to spend this time thinking of themes, because I think that makes us think of what aspects of this there are. It is a bit of a mind fuck, the opportunities here, because on one level it is just more space, and AI is just another way to make, to say how things should change. But of course we have such little idea what that means. And just in the same way that hypertext, I think, was invented when the index was invented. An index is, they're hyperlinks to that volume. Look at the index and you see what page something is on. That's kind of a hyperlink. I think maybe that what we are seeing with these incredible technologies, and this also goes back to what was discussed earlier, we can implement on a normal flat screen. There's nothing wrong with that as well.
I think there's another aspect of this, which is maybe not a theme, but I think it should be addressed, and maybe a sub theme, but it's the enshittification. It's the and that's the exploitative take on it. But the other way to present it is that there's so many services and there's so many tabs and there's so many things now that even though I have like a massive amount of screen space, it's still screen space of a lot of junk, you know, to the point that turning off the monitors, and I imagine this would be true in VR as well, can be refreshing. But that's not a problem with the tech, you know, and it's not just a problem with me and lack of discipline. It's there's a third factor, you know, there's affordances, tech, and then our culture, the, you know, FOMO, whatever it is, to just always have more there. It affects it affects how we write and how we read as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's something that I'm acutely conscious of in the context of being an advocate for the web, is that the web, for all its benefits, for all of its cross-platform stuff, is the place that is most compromised by the incentives and motivations of different parties being pretty wildly misaligned. And so enshittification happens in many contexts because the sort of the debasement of a service that is being provided doesn't have to happen. When somebody has a paid app, then they have some kind of basis on which to extract value from it while they're doing stuff. But there's also still this tendency to enshittify, to simplify and like to reduce the scope of the quality and things like that. But the web is a battleground for it, you know, because it's the place where people naturally kind of navigate to things, and they can go across silos and sites and frames of reference. You know, one of the things that I think is most important about the web is not that it's made in HTML or anything like that, but just the fact that, like, when you have an application, it's got a certain notional view of, like, here's a title, here's a subtitle. So if you have a menu app, then it has all of these fields in this kind of order, and there's no reason why that it can't also be a sort of a shared sort of notional structure for, you know, 19th century European battles. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to have sort of a schema that you have the tabular fields that are equally sort of able to kind of describe a hamburger and the Battle of Waterloo. But the web is the place where that happens, and that people have the sort of the representational flexibility to be able to bend what it is sort of on the fly and arbitrarily between those different forms. You know, programming is formality, and the web is it's sort of opposition to that formality at times. But yeah, it's compromised the most because of that, because people need to get paid. They need to have ways of being enriched by providing stuff, and one of the easiest ways of doing that is by tricking people and sneaking things across their eyeballs. And so it's something that will never and can never go away as a tension and a problem inside the web, which is different from Frode's main concern of text per se. But because in almost all other respects, that the web is perfect for that sort of domain, the fact that it sort of exists in this tension with these conflicted incentives is a very, very important issue for me, and what any browser, not just Apple's, but obviously Apple's, can plausibly do to sort of provide a countervailing pressure to it while still allowing people what they need to live in producing things that have value to their users. Because, like, blocking ads is one thing, but making it so that it's no longer viable for them to make enough money to do the stuff that they want is a very separate and much more serious problem.
I've got a funny anecdote that is semi-related. My wife just started at Apple a few weeks ago, right?
Oh, cool.
She works in the services, so totally not your area. But she was going through, she had a lot of documents to go through, various APIs to try and find like some similarity. And she asked her boss, where's the printer? And the boss is like, what printer? What are you talking about? She's like, surely there's a printer somewhere here. And so they had to go around. They finally found the printer, and she started printing out the docs. And the guy was like, what are you doing? But now it makes sense, because she was able to very easily kind of grok these different API documentations by having, physical, tangible control. And it's not the same enshittification thing, but it's a story of how we have willingly given over some affordances that we've taken for granted for so long. And there is something really valuable about, hey, here's 2 docs. I can look at them, I can move them. Anyway.
Oh, so many things on that. I'm just writing in the notes here. First of all, I wanted in author to have Command P be export, publish. Because printing is such a secondary thing now. Apple said no. But, it's kind of there. Absolutely no to Tufty aesthetic. Absolutely no. Tufty is very beautiful. It's kind of graphic design porn, I would say. We all need to have at least one copy of his books. They're beautiful, but they're also incredibly difficult to read. There is no overview. You can't tell when you go from one topic to another, because he uses all the pages to show off the designs. So the individual pieces in there are super important, but his books are absolutely awful, I think, which is hilarious. Obviously, it's great work. Now, also, in the defense of apps are great. There's nothing wrong with apps. There are some things I think apps are much better for than the web stuff. I was going to, in trying to organize the next Future of Text, the British Library is one of the places I'm thinking of going. The very first Future of Text was the British Library. Been in dialogue with them. I was going to send them the video recording of the first meeting, because it's the first time Vint Cerf and Ted Nelson met, was at that event. I go to my Vimeo page. No, it's not available, because I haven't paid my £200 a year pro subscription on Vimeo, so they have made the movie video not available, right? We have to remember the web rots. The web is absolutely trash for anything other than interaction. It's fantastic for interaction, but it has no viability. If someone doesn't pay money, things go away. If someone doesn't service the server, things go away. It's a great sharing mechanism, but it cannot be the be all and end all. It is absolutely frightening to think that, we're considering that. So if you have an app, whatever it is, as long as it's open. I mean, Bent asked me earlier today, if I have any patents or any of that stuff. None of the work that I do is protected. All the code is available. And in a community, I want to compete on the interactions. I want to make interactions for my kind of people. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Anyway, that was my soapbox. Over to Peter. We still don't know how to lip read.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I could go on for 2 hours about the evils of software patents, and it was just a dead end I wish we hadn't taken. But going back to the topic of advertisements, I actually find sometimes that the ads that show up are helpful. I just wish there was a dedicated ad bar and like a little drawer that would slide out of my browser, so that when I'm interested in getting that side channel of pointers to things that I've been researching and reading about recently, they weren't interrupting the flow of my primary reading space, and they weren't utterly destroying the aesthetic of the rest of the pages I'm looking at. Almost invariably, you'll be on like a dark theme page and they'll stick in white ads, or you'll be on a white page, they'll stick in dark ads. They'll make the ads right in the middle, interrupting your reading flow, something awful. And if all that stuff was just tucked off to the side, and I had some nice operating system level filtering controls, so I could say, if it's related to mail enhancement, don't show it to me. It's a total waste of my time. But yes, I am interested in these general tech areas. If you're suggesting an ad related to a conference or an event that I might be interested in, by all means, I'd like to have that, but in my periphery and not in my primary display. And I think if browsers provide an affordance like that, then people would be more willing to turn off the ad blocker. It's not a blocker that I want. It's a ad, how should I put it?
Relevancy?
Exactly. I just want to behave a little bit better and push it out of the way so that it has better behavior and, you know, it's available. I can see it, but it's not competing for my primary focus when I am trying to primarily focus.
But what about money?
But the underlying notion of there being advertisement-based support for web services, I don't have a problem with.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. I saw, oh yeah, Alan, you have to go and find, oh, I think we all have to go soon.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what I will beg of you, as a summary of today, is please send me thoughts on themes if you would like, or prompts to people. Please also send specific suggestions for who you'd like to invite. If it's someone you know, please obviously tell me that. The chances of me saying no, I don't want that person, are extremely low. There would have to be a good historical reason to. I trust you guys, obviously. Yeah, see you later, Alan. But I hope that next week we can have that discussion on paper. And I don't know, should I email the whole community and say that next week we're having that discussion? See who wants to join?
Yes, because I think overall having some theme brings people who might have forgotten, who might also be very focused on it and be enlightening us literally. So I think it would be good.
Okay, I'm calling the session next Monday, VR and paper, the twain. The twain shall meet. Yes, very funny. Okay.
Great session, guys.
Yeah, no, good. Also, when it comes to this whole, the thing that we are, if you have anything else specific you want it to be, I mean, Fabian has been amazing at introducing people and topics. If any of you else want something, I mean, Adam, you have very different ways of doing things than me. You should feel absolutely free to say this and that, can I have it for this or whatever, right? It just makes it, I'm frustrated because I'm sitting here with you guys, you are amazing and you're so different. So we have these things and I feel afterwards, how can I let the rest of the world know about this? We've got to chunk things up, that's all. I know I've said it, I'm done. Edgar did his play today, so I look forward to watching Emily's recording of it. He looked adorable as always. Any other comments or questions from you guys?
And then yes, a very brief advertisement, since that was the topic. I just read earlier today a document. It's a short comics, like 50 pages from the Free Software Foundation, where a little girl is building a skateboard and it doesn't work. So there's a little bit of a story behind it, but basically on the value of open source and being able to freely tinker. I think it's $10 or so, but I mean, I warmly recommend it. It's heartwarming.
You have a link?
We'll put the link in the chat.
Right. So also, Leon and Adam, if you do want to, and also Brandel, if you do want to be listed as editorial board, please just send me an email or reply to my email saying sure. Absolutely no reason to or not to. I don't care. I'm very grateful you are here. And
I'm happy to be a lot more overt these days. I think all of the important secrets are out. So yeah, happy to help where I can.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Yeah, there was something else I just can't remember. That's all good. All right, look forward to seeing. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to try to say. Because I'm going more into the research space, think about how you want to be a part of that, if at all. If you only want to be chatting on Mondays, that's fine. If you want to do some other kind of a project, that's fine. If you want to claim more ownership of something, that's fine. You know, we are the core group here, plus Alan, who is not here right now. Mark Anderson is working mostly on Mondays. But yeah, let's make this useful. All right, have a great week, everyone. Bye.
Have a good week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.